everyone, and welcome to the Physics Wala English channel. And I am Diksha Sharma, your zoology teacher. So, today we are going to discuss a very important chapter from the NEET point of view, as well as a CBSE point of view, or any board point of view. And that chapter is reproductive health of your NCERT. So, one suggestion that I'll give to all of you is that whenever you are studying, please you should have a copy and a pen. You just don't need to watch the lecture, you have to write this down as well. So making notes is a very good habit and you should start it, right? So let's get started with this chapter, that is reproductive health. So what are we going to study here? We are going to study a lot of very interesting things you might be knowing about. One is demography. Demography is the study of population. So, how the population works, what are the factors that increases the populations, and what are the factors that decreases the population. Second, we have contraceptive methods, commonly known as birth control methods. We have STDs, the sexually transmitted diseases, and assisted reproductive technology. So, this chapter comprises of these four important topics, and the chances of the arrival of question in your exam is much higher. Though it's a very small chapter, but it's interesting at the same time, and also it contains a lot of weightage in NEET. So let's get started. So first of all, what is a reproductive health? Since the chapter says its name is reproductive health, so what is reproductive health? So there is a World Health Organization that actually deals with all the upcoming, all the diseases that are coming nowadays, or whatsoever medical issues are there. So this organization has given a very good definition of reproductive health. And what's that? According to WHO, which is World Health Organization, reproductive health means a total well-being in all aspects of reproduction, that is physical, emotional, behavioral, and social. So what they're trying to say is reproductive health includes three factors. One is physical, second is emotional, behavioral, and social. What they are trying to say is that we don't say that if a person is having, all these function properly, all the organs are in a proper shape, that person is reproductively healthy. Rather, we say, yes, its reproductive organs should be well and good and fine, but along with that, that person should be emotionally stronger. Emotionally, it should be fine. No psychological effects are there. Second, behavioral and social. That means its behavior is good enough for the other people so that it can live its life beautifully socially, right? Okay, so this is the definition given by the WHO. Therefore, a society with people having physically and functionally normal reproductive organs and normal emotional and behavioral interactions among them in all sex related aspects might be called reproductively healthy. So this is what I have explained you, that if a person is physically fit, its reproductive organs are going well, then even after that its emotional and behavioral aspects plays a vital role, and then we call it as a reproductively healthy. So all those organisms which are reproductively healthy, they makes a healthy, reproductively healthy society. All right, so next is demography. So as I've told you, what is a demography? It is the study of population. Study of population. Okay. So you must have heard of a word which is population explosion. Now what is this population explosion? What is population explosion? It is the increase in number of the individuals in a population per unit time. For example, if I'm talking about the population of India, the individuals which are born per unit time, they are more, or the the population is growing in a rapid rate. So you use that word there as population explosion. So it's the number of individuals or the population increase per unit time. Population growth, you can say, per unit time. So if in a less time there is more growth, that means we say that the population is exploding. It's exploding at a faster rate. right? So there was a scientist named T.R. Malthus. He has given a law. He was actually a scientist. On his work, actually Darwin was so much impressed by the work of the T.R. Malthus that he actually gave his theory, right? So what did this Malthus said? He said that we, the organisms, we reproduce at a faster rate, but the natural resources that are present on this planet Earth, they reproduce at a slower rate comparatively. That means if I am on the planet Earth, we organism, the humans, will actually reproduce so fastly that our population will explode one day. And since the natural resources, they are growing at a slower rate, so one time will happen, or some time will come when the all the organism, they will fight among themselves and they will die. Why? Because there is a competition that will arise, and there are less resources. So this is how they say that the organisms, they reproduce at a faster rate. Who they? Organisms. Whereas the natural resources reproduce at slower rate. Now what will happen if this occurs? If there are more organisms, for example, these are organisms, right? And this is only one tree they can feed on. Now what will happen? The competition will arise. So due to this, competition will arise. Competition will arise, and ultimately there will be survival of fittest. That was given by the Darwin. All right. So let's see what are the problems and strategies associated with the reproductive health. So the first problem that you all know is the overpopulation, right? So the only problem we have in our country is the overpopulation. Since there are a lot of individuals, there is more competition. For example, if we take an example, a very little example of your NEET exam, right? So in the NEET exam, around 20 lakh students sit every year, right? So NEET exam, nearly 20 lakh individuals, or the students or the pupil, they appear for this test. But if you see, in some countries there is not enough population. Like, the population of some countries are not around 20 lakhs, right? So what we are saying here is that, so if there is a lot of individual, there will be more competition. There will be less resources, and the survival rate will be very less, right? So that's why we say in India it's really, really very difficult to survive, because there are a lot of individual, and on a single thing a lot of people are, they are dependent upon that single thing. So this is how overpopulation becomes a major problem. So in 1951, a family planning program was introduced by our government. So under this program, a lot of individuals were actually educated about the population explosion, about the contraceptive methods, and how they can plan the family, right? You must have heard of a slogan, hum do hamare do, right, in the advertisement. So under this program, they opened some family planning program chambers in the hospital, where the couples can go and they can learn about all these things, and they can actually plan the family accordingly. So this was later on replaced by reproductive and child health care. Later on, this program was replaced by reproductive and child health care. So which includes family planning program, as well as the health of the mother and the children born, right? So as a result, you can make a more reproductively healthy society. Then we have the awareness. Yes, as I've told you, you must have heard of a slogan, hum do hamare do. The government is spreading a lot of awareness among people, those who are educated as well as those which are not educated. So they're promoting less child norm, right? So if there are, like, there's a couple, right? If a couple is, right, one male and another female, so if they're dying, they should replace the same number of individual, no the more than that. For example, in a family there is one husband and wife. If they die, they can be replaced by their two children. If they have three children, the population is going to explode, right? So always, you must have heard of the slogan hum do hamare do. Otherwise you must have come across a lot of advertisement on your television or the YouTube, or before the movie starts in a picture hall. So they spread the awareness about the reproductive health. For example, nowadays there is an advertisement given by Akshay Kumar where he actually tells about the how bad the cigarette smoking is, and side by side he also tell about how a sanitary napkin can protect a female or prevent her from a lot of diseases, right? So this is how they are spreading awareness by the audio visual aids, by the audio visual aids like television, YouTube and all, by newspapers, or by simply advertising in hospitals. Even at your level, even at your level, the students can also spread the awareness, by nukkad natak and something like that. So these are the problems and strategy. Let's discuss more problem and strategy. One is sex education. This is a, this sex education is one of a fundamental thing that we need to have in our education. So what happened is, because we are not introduced by this education at a very early age, so while a person or a girl or a boy is entering into a teenage, while a boy or a girl is entering into a teenage, they have a lot of myths and misconceptions in their mind about the sex, right? For example, at our time when we were kids, a lot of kids used to believe in a fact that after kissing a girl can get pregnant. You must have heard about it, right? So yes, that's true. Why? Because we were not introduced by this sex education. We had no other place to learn about it. Neither our parents were talking about it, nor our brothers and sister, and there was no YouTube. There was nothing like that that could spread a lot of awareness. Fine. So sex education is very much important. That will tell the teenagers, especially of that particular age group, that what these sex organs are, how do they work, how you can remain reproductively healthy, how can you prevent the sexually transmitted diseases, right? So all these things are very much important. So sex education should be introduced. Sex education should be introduced for breaking the myths and misconceptions. Myths and misconceptions. All right. This can also prevent the young population from STIs. Not the young, even the people of any age group. If they don't know about a lot of things, they if they're introduced to sex education, they are prevented from the STIs. So this can also prevent the young population from STIs or STDs. What is STI? Sexually transmitted infection, and STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. Then we have birth control methods. So a lot of people actually in the a lot of areas are still there in the India, where people actually don't know about what are birth control pills. Yes, it's true. So if I say I take an initiative, and I go to some area where people are actually they have not been introduced by these birth control pills ever. So if I go there and I tell them that if you use this thing, you can actually have sex and there will be no baby, and that will be a better thing, because if they don't know, they're going to produce a lot of children, right? So these birth control methods should be introduced, and they should be of a low cost, or they should be free for every individual, so that the population explosion should be controlled. So birth control methods, these methods should be introduced should be introduced to various people, so that so that they could not have they could not have the unwanted child. All right, so there are a lot of people who do not want another child, but accidentally it happens because they don't know what are birth control methods. All right, so next we have sex abuse. So sex abuse is something which are at a higher rate nowadays in India. For example, rapes, right? Also, the child abuse. So the basic thing happen is when a child does not know what the reproductive organs are and what is a good touch and what is a bad touch, they are more prone to being sexually abused. So yes, we should also tell a little kid that what actually a sex abuse is and how to prevent from that. So sex abuse and sex related crimes makes a society reproductively unhealthy. How? Because the emotion of a person is not at a well place, or the behavior of a person is not at a well place, right? So that's why the person is doing this crime. So the sex abuse and sex related crimes makes a society reproductively unhealthy. Reproductively unhealthy. Then we have a lot of research and medical facilities. So nowadays in a government hospital, with minimum cost or no cost, a baby can be delivered, or they are given with the family planning programs where they are given the free contraceptive methods, right, or contraceptive devices. So a lot of research has taken place where a lot of contraceptive devices have been discovered or invented. Pills have been invented which are of no side effect or of the least side effects. So here, research, what we have done in the research, we have made Saheli. Saheli is a non-contraceptive pills. Non-steroidal contraceptive pills is one of a non-steroidal contraceptive pill. That means it does not contain a steroid, so the side effect is very less, right? So the side effect is very less. All right, another medical facilities like government hospitals, they are introducing a lot of things so that people get attracted, and they use these things, they use the contraceptive methods and the family planning program so that there should be no population explosion. All right, moving further to next. So we have PNDTs. Now what are these PNDTs and how they are responsible for making a reproductively healthy society? So these are actually some tests done to a pregnant female, right? So these are certain techniques. These are actually what they are, certain techniques, and what you call it as the full form of PNDT is prenatal diagnostic test or techniques. So there are two types of PNDT. What is a prenatal? First of all, prenatal means before birth. The meaning of a prenatal is before birth. So there are two types of methods here. One is the invasive method, another is a non-invasive method. So invasion means to invade something, to enter into something. So these methods are done by invading into the womb of the mother, right? So what we are doing in the invasive method, the invasion of a syringe into womb. So there are two techniques that a woman can undergo, a pregnant female can undergo. One is the CVS, which is chorionic villi sampling. And another is, you must have heard of it, amniocentesis. Now, what are these techniques? The CVS or the chorionic villi sampling, you must have heard about the chorionic villi in the human reproduction chapter. So, chorionic villi, what is a chorionic villi? These are finger-like projections. These are what? These are finger-like projections that help the embryo to get attached to mother's endometrium of uterus, right? So we have the innermost layer, which is endometrium, on which the embryo gets attached, and that you call it as implantation. So the attachment of the embryo occurs due to the presence of the chorionic villi. So what we do is when there is around 8 week of pregnancy, which week? 8 week. So around 8 week of pregnancy, what we do is through vagina, we take a scalpel and then we scratch out the cells of chorionic villi. So this is chorionic villi, right? So what we do is we take the sample of the cells of chorionic villi and then we undergo the microscopic examination, wherein we can actually check whether the cells are fine or not. So if there is, genetic disorder, they can easily check it through the chromosomal, testing, and then later on, the female can be asked to undergo abortion according to her will, right? So here from chorionic villi, what we do in a chorionic villi sampling, the cells are scrapped out. The cells are scrapped out from the chorionic villi. All right. Then we have amniocentesis. So you also must be knowing about one thing, that's amniotic sac, or you must have heard of a thing that a baby in a mother's womb is present in a water bag, right? So if this is the womb, if this is a womb, and this is the amniotic sac, and in the amniotic sac the embryo is present peacefully, right? So it's the embryo. So in this amniotic sac, a fluid is present, which you call it as amniotic fluid. So which is this fluid? This is amniotic fluid. So technically the embryo is bathing in this amniotic fluid during its gestation, right? So this amniotic fluid is extracted with the help of a syringe. So if this is a womb of the mother, we will take a syringe, and then we will extract some of the fluid. Now this fluid will undergo testing. So what we have done, we have extracted amniotic fluid. And then what we'll do, it will undergo the microscopic examination. So what we are actually searching in this amniotic fluid. So if the embryo is lying here peacefully, and I tell you that this procedure is done around 15 to 20 week of pregnancy, so this embryo will be having a lot of body cells. And when embryo is born, when an embryo is born, a lot of it is died and a lot of it is renewed, right? So a lot of cells which falls off from the skin of the embryo, they are actually lying in this amniotic fluid. So we are actually extracting the cells from the amniotic fluid, and then these cells are undergoing the microscopic examination. So herein, by these both method, what you can do is we can actually check the genetic disorders, right? There are certain genetic disorders which are very harmful for the fetus, or in the later stages after its birth, the fetus will not be able to survive much. So in that place, the doctor can ask the pregnant female, to abort the child, because if a child is born, maybe the child will not survive in a later stages. So these are the methods which are invasive methods. Let's talk about the non-invasive method. In non-invasive methods, we are actually not entering into the womb. Rather, we are just looking at the fetus from outside. So one of the method you must have watched in the movies, and that is ultrasound, right? So in a lot of movies, you can see a monitor and a female lying pregnant, and a doctor is having a probe and running on the tummy of the mother, right? So that process is a non-invasive, because you're not entering into the womb of the mother. So you call that method is ultrasound or ultrasonography. USG, ultrasonography. And another method is AFP, alpha fetoprotein. Alpha fetoprotein. Okay. So first of all, we'll talk about the ultrasonography. So here ultrasounds are used. So whatever probe you see in that doctor's hand, that contains, a machine that actually have ultrasound. So these ultrasound waves, ultrasonic waves, the ultrasound waves, they will enter into the womb, it will strike the embryo and it will come back. And when these waves are reflected back, they are actually captured by the sensors, which will then form the image on the monitor. And this is how the sound waves are used to form the image of the embryo. So what we do in this technique, the sound waves are used to make the image of of embryo. And what is AFP, alpha fetoprotein? When a female is pregnant, she has to undergo a lot of blood test. So this test takes place around 14 to 16 weeks of a pregnancy. So around this week of a pregnancy, the AFP level should be higher. It should be higher. So if before 14 to 16 week the level is very much higher, or after this 14 to 16 week the level is very much higher, or during 14 to 16 week the level is very low, the fetus can show the morphological deformities. That means morphological deformities means the hands and the feet of the fetus must be distorted or not properly formed or not formed at all. So this is very much important to form limbs. Okay, so if the concentration of AFP is lower at 14 to 16 week or higher in other weeks, the fetus can show morphological deformities. All right. So these were the non-invasive methods, and invasives were amniocentesis and the CVS. Okay, so one thing about the amniocentesis. So there was the PNDT Act that was enacted on 1994. So under this act, you cannot know the sex of the fetus. So we can say the sex determination is illegal. It's illegal because a lot of people, if they got to know that's a female, they actually kill her, right? So under this act, after amniocentesis, because this is the most common method used, after amniocentesis, no one can know the gender of the child. All right. Next is your measures to control overpopulation. So how can you control overpopulation? First of all, you can educate people. Educating the people. Second, how can you control it? By a fixed marriageable age. For example, in India, the marriageable age for males and for female is different. For female, it's 18 years, and for male is 21 years. So by this, you can also control the population, because people will be knowing a lot of things. Fine. Third, family planning. So if you plan a family, for example, if a couple knows they need one child, single child, that's a family planning. So later on, they will use the birth control methods to avoid the unwanted pregnancies. And then fourth, government should introduce some incentives to the small families. For example, if there is a larger family, they must not be given those incentives, and the people with a single child, they should be given some incentives. All right, so these are the technique by which you can control the population. Next, the population stabilization. So let's know how many are we, right? Okay, so if I talk about the world population, right? If I talk about the world population, there was 2 billion around 1900, and then by 2000, the total number of people on this planet Earth were 6 billion, and in 2011, 7.2 billion. So this is one which you are following right now. Then in India, we were 350 million at the time of independence, when we got the independence around 1947. reach close to the billion mark by 2000. So by 2000 we were 1 billion, crossed 1.2 billion in May 2011. So there is one thing that I would like to tell you is census. You must have heard of the word census. What is a census? In Hindi we call it as Janganana. So census is just the head counting of individuals in a country. For example, in our country, the census takes place after every 11 years, right? So this one is going to be, I think, in 2021 only. I don't know what's going on right now. So the census is actually the head counting. So we just do not head counting of individual. We just do not count the heads, or we just do not count how much the individuals are, or how many the individuals are. Rather, we are also concerned about whether they are getting all the implemented things by the government or not. For example, whether they are getting the kids are getting the proper education or not, how many kids are there, and in which class they are, or what other members of the family are doing, are they getting all the facilities given by the government or not, right? So this is what census is. So if you can see here, in the latest census was in 2011. As I have told you, it takes with interval of 10 years difference, right? So there is a 10-year difference between every census. So okay, so according to the 2011 census, so we come here with the line census report, the population growth rate was less than 2%. That is 20 per thousand per year, a rate at which our population could increase rapidly. So with this census, you find out the growth rate. You find out the growth rate. So there are different techniques to find out the growth rate. For example, so annual average growth rate is found by the, or deduced by a formula. How? What we do is we actually take both the population in our mind. For example, if I say that we have P2, right? P2, the one which we take in the recent census, and P1 in the previous census, right? And then what we'll do it, we will multiply the P1 into n and into 100. So this becomes the formula. P2, the one we have taken in the recent census. For example, if in 2021 you are getting a report of a total number of individual, so P2 will be the population of 2021 and P1 will be the population of 2011. And n is the number of years that I tell you, the 10 years, right? And then multiply by 100 will become a growth rate. So by this formula, we have reduced that the growth rate of India is less than 2%. What is it? Less than 2%. Okay. So if I say it's less than 2%, what does it mean? It means per 1,000 individual, new 20 people are added per year, right? So if I say about the year 2021, right? If I say the population growth of India is less than 2%, I'll say in this year, out of these 1,000 individual, if I have population of 1,000 individual, in that group 20 more are added in 2021. All right, so this is what means less than 2%. So you have to remind this, because the chances of the question from this part is more. All right, okay, so moving further to the population growth indicators. So how do we come to know that our population is increases, right? Or it is increasing at a rapid rate or something like that. So there are certain indicators which tell us about the, what's happening in a population. So first of all, we have a birth rate. So you must have heard of this word birth rate, or also known as natality, right? So what is a birth rate or natality? It is the total number of individuals born per 1,000 individuals, right? So what is a birth rate? Total number of individuals born per 1,000. That's your birth rate, right? So if I say the birth rate of of this year was like 20 individual per 1,000, and maybe in the next year it's 30 individual per 1,000, so what you deduce from this? You deduce that from, as comparison to the previous year, this year the growth rate of the population is going to be higher, or I say the birth rate is increasing, right? So the second thing is the death rate. Death rate or mortality. Now what is this death rate or mortality? What is it? It is the total number of individuals died. Total number of individuals died per 1000. Right? So, for example, if I say out of these 1000 individual, like 3 people died this year. 3 people died this year. And in the previous year, actually 20 people were died or they were dead, right? So what I got to know about this is that this year less people died. So that means my population is growing. So whenever there is increase in birth rate, there is increase in population. And whenever there is increase in death rate, there is decrease in population. I hope that's pretty clear to everyone. Okay, moving further to the other growth indicators, like we have a mortality, but there are certain special mortality as well. For example, we have infant mortality rate. We have infant mortality rate. And then we have the maternal mortality rate. Maternal mortality rate. Okay, what's the difference? For example, if I say a child was born, but the child was born dead, then what's that? So a newborn baby is known as an infant. So what's the criteria of defining an infant? Is from its birth to at least 1 year. So infant is a child of less than 1 year. To be very in a simplified version, I can say that an infant is a child with the age of less than 1 year. So if the children of less than 1 year, they are dying, right? So what we'll call its rate, will call it as a infant mortality rate. So it is the number of infant or infants died per 1000 individuals, right? So what is the infant? The child less than of 1 year of age. What is maternal mortality rate? So if I'm saying there is a woman and a woman is a pregnant and something complication or something complicated occurs during pregnancy and the female died, so you will count it in the maternal mortality rate, right? So whatsoever mothers are dying due to pregnancy and their rate is known as the maternal mortality rate. So number of mothers died per 1000 individual due to due to due to pregnancy. Maternal word is always used for mothers. I hope you know that. Yes. Okay. Then moving further to some question, but let's discuss one more thing. So this was about the birth rate, the death rate, right? So if I'm saying there is increase in birth rate, the population is increasing. If I say there is increase in death rate, the population is decreasing. But are these only factors that leads to population explosion? No, there are migration as well. What is a migration? The movement of individuals. Migration, right? What is migration? Movement of individuals. That people are moving from one place to another. So there are two things. Either either a person can move out of a population. If this is a population, for example, this is the country India, right? If I say there are people who are moving out of the population and there are people who are moving inside the population, right? So if I say a lot of people from Nepal and Bangladesh, they are entering into our country, so what it's happening? Immigration is happening, right? And if I say a lot of people, they are moving out of the country, for example, a lot of students, they are moving out and they settle down abroad in the countries, you will say that's emigration. E for exit, right? So remind from here. So if there is more immigration, that is E, immigration, there is more immigration, that means the population is going to decrease. If there is more immigration, that means the population is going to increase, right? So what is migration? It is movement of the individual. If it is in the population, then it is immigration. If it is moving out of the population, it is immigration. All right, then moving to the question, how the most complicated thing a student feel in this topic is, what type of question can occur from this topic. So let's see what type of a question can actually arise in your examination. So the first is, which of the following does not cause population explosion? Decline in death rate, decline in maternal mortality rate, decline in infant mortality rate, and decline in the birth rate. Yes, you have to do this yourself. No cheating at all. I have taught you all these factors. You have to tell me now. Yes. Okay, so you can also write the answer in the comment section. I'll see it later on. So you have to find out that factor which does not cause population explosion. That means due to this thing, your population will not increase. If I say there is decrease in the death rate, there is decrease in the death rate, that means less people are dying. That means there will be more population. So wherever there is decline in death rate, there is decline in death rate, there is decline in death rate, and there is decline in death rate. So these are actually going to increase the population. But the one which is not going to increase the population is less birth rate. That means less people are being born. If less people are being born, that means there is less population. I hope you can do these questions. Yes, the only thing that you have to do is you have to read the question carefully and you have to understand each and every option of it. All right, next is, according to 2011 census, the population growth rate was India ki, right? About India. Okay, so according to 2011 census, our annual average growth rate was less than 2%. That means 20 individuals are added per 1000 per year. The answer becomes B or 2, right? All right. Moving further to the next topic, and that's contraceptive methods. So now what are contraceptive methods? The contraceptive methods are the birth control methods. What are they? They are the birth control method. That means by using these method, one can prevent the unwanted pregnancy. So by using these methods, one can prevent unwanted pregnancy. All right. So what do we have? What variety do we have in these birth control methods? So the first thing that I'm going to talk about are natural methods. What are these methods? Natural method. These occurs naturally. You do not need anything. You do not eat a pill. You do not consume a pill. You do not use any devices. And there are no side effects. Since you're not using anything, there will be no side effect as well, right? So, but what we say, if we are not using anything, the failure rate of these methods are more, plus these methods are not going to protect you from STDs, right? So natural methods, no pills or devices used, least side effect, higher failure rate, does not prevent from STD, does not prevent from STD. All right, so let's talk about the first method. So the first method is periodic abstinence. Periodic abstinence. Periodic means with interval of time, and abstinence is not practicing something. Not practicing something. Not practicing something. Okay. So what are we not practicing here? What are we not practicing here? We're not practicing the sexual intercourse or the coitus. So if I know, or if we all know, that a female ovulate at the 14th day of her menstrual cycle, and the chances of pregnancy at that 14 days are very much high. So, if a couple abstain, or if a couple is not practicing sexual intercourse, or they're not undergoing or doing sex at that time interval, the chances of female getting pregnant will be less. But again, we do not only take just the 14 day, rather, we take some time interval from 10 to 17 days. Because we always take some days before the ovulation and after days the after the ovulation into the bracket. The reason is that because you never know when a female is going to ovulate, because some have irregular cycles and the cycle never go correctly like on just day 14, right? So that this is how, if they do not practice the sexual intercourse at the day 10 to 17 of a menstrual cycle of a female, the chances of pregnancy is less. So this is what the periodic abstinence is. But again, for this, what a female should have, a female should have a very regular cycle. If she is suffering from PCOD or something like that, and her cycles are not regular, then the chances of pregnancy can be more. Fine. Okay, so periodic abstinence, that means not practicing. Now what we do here is not practicing sexual intercourse from day 10 to 17 of menstrual cycle, as the female ovulates at this time, and the chances of pregnancy are higher. All right, so this is about the periodic abstinence. Moving to the other methods. Yes, guys, other methods. We have the next method. And what is that? That is coitus interruptus. As I've told you, the another name of sexual intercourse is coitus, right? Interruptus means we are interrupting. So during sexual intercourse, the penis gets into the vagina of a female, right? So at the end of the intercourse, the male ejaculates semen. So if a male does not ejaculate within the vagina and withdraws or removes the penis before the ejaculation, or do not ejaculate inside the female's vagina, the chances of pregnancy can be less. But again, it has a very much higher failure rate, because there is a fluid that comes out from the penis of a male before ejaculation. That's a preseminal fluid. So sometimes the preseminal fluid can also contain some sperms. So the chances of pregnancy is still higher there, right? So what is coitus interruptus? The withdrawal of penis before ejaculate. Before ejaculate, right? But sometimes the preseminal fluid containing sperm can cause pregnancy. Can cause pregnancy. Then we have the third method in the natural methods only, because we are doing the natural methods only right now. So the third one is lactational amenorrhea. Lactational amenorrhea. So what is amenorrhea? First of all, amenorrhea means no menses. What does it mean? It means no menses. So when a female is having amenorrhea, no menses, when she is doing lactation. So after the birth of the child, the female undergoes a period of intense lactation of around 6 months. During this time interval, the hormone prolactin is very much higher, and this prolactin gives on, negative feedback to the pituitary, and pituitary does not secrete any FSH. And when there is no FSH, there is no more growth of ovarian follicles, and as a result, if there is no growth of ovarian follicle, the menstrual cycle will not resume, it will be at halt, right? But again, this is temporary, and it is also of a higher risk of getting pregnancy. It has a higher failure rate. The reason is because you never know, the hormones will come up and down, and maybe the female will start ovulating at that time. So there is no guarantee of this method. So natural methods are the methods with no guarantee, right? So what is a lactational amenorrhea? During lactation, a female's menstrual cycle, female menstrual cycle is at halt due to high level of prolactin hormone. You know what is prolactin hormone? That produces milk in a female mammary glands. High level of prolactin hormone, which gives negative feedback to pituitary. So for how many time interval this works? The intense lactation is of 6 months. So for these time interval, it may work, but sometimes it is a bigger chances. There are a bigger chances of failure as well, right? Okay. The next method, contraceptive method that we are going to discuss is your barrier method. Barrier. So in the barrier method, it's a good method. It's a cheaper option. Plus, it prevents some of the barrier method. They prevent STDs. So in the barrier method, we are actually using some devices. Some devices are used here, which are actually acting as a barrier so that sperm and ova should not meet. Right. So what are the different methods we have here? We have one method which is condoms. Then we have female condoms. Then we have diaphragm and volts. And then we have cervical caps. Okay, all right. So condoms are basically, whenever we use the word condom nowadays, we are talking about a male condom, right? So here I'm talking about a male condom. So if I'm talking about a male condom, what it is actually, it's made up of a latex rubber. What it is made up of? Latex rubber. So a male, before the sexual intercourse, the male has to wear this on the penis. So a male wrap around a condom on the penis so that when the penis enters into the vagina during sexual intercourse, there will be no contact of the vagina with the male penis. So this is how they can prevent what? They can prevent the contraception or the pregnancy. Also, if both genitals are not into the contact, there are less chances of STDs, or we can say the condoms, they prevent STDs, right? So here the male condoms, so in the male condoms, what a male does, the male condom is wrapped on the male penis. So government has introduced the condom, which is Nirod, in the family planning program at a minimum, or at a very lower rate, right? And the female condoms are fem shields. They are made up of polyurethane, and the female wear them inside vagina. So technically it is covering the entire vagina. So let's see how. So if I say this is the vagina of a female, if this is a vagina of a female, the female will wear the fem shield in a way that the fem shield has two opening, one the larger one, another the smaller one. So it has two opening, and this one is actually closed, right? It has two rings, and the one ring, this one is closed and this one is open. So if this is the outside and this is the inside, so the closed one should be where in the innermost region or the side. Fine. Okay, so what about the male condoms then? If this is a penis of a male, if this is a penis of a male, the penis, the male will wrap around the condom on the penis. So the unwrapped condoms look like this, and there is a small nipple like here. And when a person wraps on the penis, it will look just like this, right? So this is how it looks like. Okay, so typically they are covering the genitals. So we say that these both prevents the STDs. Right? So for STD, there should be a criteria that the genitals should come in contact so that the fluid will be in contact and the other one could infect the other person, right? So here, since they both are not getting, the genitals are not getting into the contact, so the chances of STD is minimum or less. Then we have diaphragm or walls. What are diaphragms? These are hemispherical structure, small dome shaped, right? So these are inserted near the cervix. So if this is the cervix, this is the vagina. This is the cervix, this is the vagina. The diaphragms are inserted near the cervix, right? So this is cervix and this is the vagina. So this is how they are inserted. So they are not actually preventing the STDs. The reason is that they are not covering the entire genitals, right? Talking about the cervical cap, if this is a cervix and this is the vagina, the cervical caps are inserted in the cervical region and they have a nipple like structure that will cause suction like this. Alright, this nipple like structure will cause the suction. And they are also not covering the entire genital. So this is how they can also cause the STD, right? Okay, so they are not causing the STD. The person that is undergoing sexual intercourse with, if that person is infected, a person can catch the STD. So it's not like if you are getting unprotected sexual intercourse, a person will get STD. This is a myth. If one of them is infected, it can give it to the another one. And for that, if a person is using condom, the chances are very less, right? Okay, then we have the another methods as well. So we have done the natural methods, we have done the barrier methods. Then we have IUDs. What are IUDs? Intra uterine devices. Intra uterine devices. So its name suggests intra, that means within. So wherever the word intra comes in the biology, you just remember one thing: intra means within. So these are inserted within the uterus, right? So these are devices inserted within the uterus, right? So a person, it's not a person friendly, so a person cannot insert it by their own, but rather they need some doctor or the expert nurse. So there are three types of IUDs. One is the inert. The second is the copper containing, and the third one is hormonal. So if I talk about these inert one, we have one example, which is Lippes loop. If I talk about the copper containing, we have example like copper T, copper 7, copper T 200, multi-load 375, like these. Okay, so these numbers suggest how much copper are they containing. So these numbers suggest how much copper are they containing. So if I say the third one is hormonal. So obviously it will be containing some hormone, and usually that hormone is usually it's like your analog of progesterone. It's like progesterone. So we have here example LNG20, leveno ergosterol, okay, or progestasert. So how do they work? If I talk about the lipase loop, we don't know how it works. It's just made up of simply barium sulfide. It's made up of steel or barium sulfide, right? Yeah, barium sulfate. So how it works, we have no clue about it right now. Copper containing, how does it work? The copper ions, they do two things. One, it increases the immune response and generates cytokines. Cytokines are certain glycoproteins of your immune system that kills a foreign substance. The foreign substance is a sperm here. So even if they can also kill the sperm directly, or they can also enhance the immunity. So if the pregnancy has taken place and the embryo is going to implant into the uterus of a female, due to these cytokines, that embryo would have like will not survive, right? Then we have the another thing, phagocytosis, and suppresses motility of sperm. That means, the sperm swims, right? So this one can actually phagocyte or engulf the sperm, or helps in engulfing by the macrophages, and also it can suppress its motility so that the sperm will not run towards the fallopian tube and there will be no pregnancy. It suppresses the motility of sperm. Then we have levonorgestrel. It has a number of functions to perform. For example, if I say this is the analog of progesterone, and you must be knowing a negative feedback, negative feedback of hormones. If there is high concentration of progesterone, if you don't know, I'm telling you, if there is high concentration of progesterone in a female's body, that will inhibit the pituitary gland, and pituitary gland will not secrete FSH. If there is no FSH, no growth of ovarian follicle, and there will be no ovulation. So ultimately it is suppressing what? Due to this, there will be no ovulation. Also, since it is not the regular progesterone, it is the progesterone other than that, so it will also alter the nature of the endometrium, and then there will be no implantation. No implantation. Also, it will thickens the cervical mucus. So we have a cervix on the above the vagina. The cervix have cervical gland that secretes mucus. So that's why in the females, a fluid comes out of the vagina. So that mucus gets very much thick if there is a lot of this hormone, right? So if that is thick, it is going to close the uterus. So if the sperm enters into the vagina, the cervix will inhibit their entry. So it will thickens the cervical mucus. It will thicken the cervical mucus. Since it is preventing the implantation. So this method can also be considered as emergency contraceptive method. So you must have heard or you have watched the advertisement of iPill, which says if you take it within 72 hours of sexual intercourse, the unwanted pregnancy can be prevented, right? Similarly, if this is inserted inside the female's vagina, within the not in the vagina, in the uterus, within the 72 hours of sexual intercourse, so it will act as emergency contraceptive. It will alter the endometrium nature, and then there will be no implantation. So, but the thing is, within 72 hours of sexual intercourse, right? So these are the IUDs. These are the three types of IUDs. Moving further to the other contraceptive method, let's see. Before this, I'll gulp some water. All right. Then we have a chemical method. Yes, we do have some chemicals. So these are the chemicals which we actually apply in the female's vagina. And these are the methods that are used along with the barrier method to have their, more than 99% of guarantee. Fine. So what they actually do is, these are certain chemicals that kills the sperm. So these are spermicidal in nature. What are they? They are spermicidal in nature. These are spermicidal. What is spermicidal? That will kill the sperm, right? So what they will do, they will kill the sperm and used along with barrier method. Used along with barrier method. All right. Okay. Now, what are the examples? Now, what are the examples of these chemical methods? Let's see. So we have, some chemicals in the form of jellies, and some in the form of, creams, and some in the form of, sponge. So some in the form of foam, right? So we have here the different varieties like spermicidal creams, like Delphin. So you get it over the counter with the name of Delphin, right? Spermicidal, spermicidal jellies. Yes. So it can also occur in the form of jelly. Like, you seen the gel that uh you know these aloe vera gel? Just its texture is just like that. So we have here example Perceptin, Volpar paste. And then we have spermicidal form. It's in the form of aerosol, right? Like, you have some forms that are applied on the hair, and then they like stiffen up, just like male knows that. Okay, so we have this chloramin T, and then we have in the form of a sponge spermicidal sponge, that is today. Okay. All right, so these are some chemicals that we use along with that, right? Then what do we have next? Then we have the implants and injections. Injections and implants. Now, what are these? Injections are injectables, also known as injectables, right? These are injectables. These are the injections of the hormones. What are they? These are the injections of hormones given intravenously. These are the injections. Now, which hormones? If you remember, these can be these can be the progestasert, that is progesterone, or progesterone plus estrogen combination, right? Any of these. So what they are going to do, the same thing that hormonal IUDs were doing. They were also inhibiting the pituitary gland, due to which there was no FSH, no ovulation, no pregnancy. Then we have implants. Now, what are implants? These are small cylindrical devices. Have you seen the matchsticks? Obviously, everyone should have. So these implants are just like matchsticks, and they are, inserted inside the skin subcutaneously, right? Not into the blood vessels, rather in the skin. And in the skin, they will be releasing some hormones like them, right? But, the fundamentals are same. We are giving hormones, one in the form of IUD, where you will insert in the uterus, another in the form of injections, another in the form of subcutaneous devices, right? So these are cylindrical devices that are inserted subcutaneously. So we have two type of these. We have norplants and we have implanon. So these are the two examples of the type we get. For example, there is a choice. If someone wants to get just a single cylinder, or someone wants to get the 6 cylinders. For example, if I say one of them contains a single cylinder and another contains a different. So you must have seen its image in the NCRT. In the NCRT, there is a female finger shown with the six matchsticks, right? So if I'm talking about the NOR plant, it contains six silicon cylinder with LNG20. An Implanon contains one cylinder. And what does it contain? It contains 3 keto desoergestrol. And both are the analog of what? Progesterone, and they will work similarly like the hormonal IUDs were doing. All right. Moving further to the next one, which is pills. So pills are what? Pills are small tablets that you eat, right? So we have pills as well. So pills are of two types. According to their preparation, what are they made up of? We have non-steroidal pills, and then we have the steroidal pill, the one that contains steroids. So steroid we have talked about, these progesterone and all. So whatever hormones we have talked about, these all are steroids. The estrogen is made up of steroid, the progesterone is made up of steroid, even the testosterone is made up of a steroid, right? So if I say for a long duration of time, the steroids can be harmful for your body. So there comes a thought in the in the mind of a medical people that yes, there is a need for something which is non-steroidal contraceptive that may show least side effects, right? So non-steroidal pills are the ones which was the first non-steroidal was produced by CDRI Lucknow, and its name was Saheli. So Saheli was produced by Central Drug Research Institute. Lucknow, right? So what this drug was doing, it was not containing a steroid. Then what it was containing? It was containing centromin. So that's the chemical it contains. It is actually the estrogen receptor inhibitor. So all other, what were they? Whatever hormones we were using either the estrogen progesterone combination or the progesterone. So what they were inhibiting the pituitary, and as a result there was no FSH. Now what if we are not using a hormone? Rather we are blocking its receptor. That is one thing. There is a basic I'm telling you. For example, if I have the gland, pituitary gland, okay, so it has a receptor. It has a receptor for hormone H, right? For hormone H. You have a receptor for hormone H. Okay. So before the hormone it enters here, I have used something here or here that will block the receptor, and hormone will no longer be working on this receptor, and pituitary will not function. Ultimately, there will be no ovulation. You getting my point? Yes. I am rather not using any hormone. I am just blocking the receptor on which the hormone binds, and it tells pituitary gland to work. So if I say the receptor is blocked, there will be no functioning of a pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland will not block, or will not the pituitary gland will not form the FSH. Fine. So this actually happens here. We are blocking the estrogen receptor, and no more functions like that of will occur. There will be no ovulation, and there will be no pregnancy. Fine. Then we have some steroidal pills, the one which contains estrogen progesterone combination or just the progesterone. So we have these two types of pills. We have POP, that is progesterone only pill. So a person has to take this for entire month. So taken for a month. So in this case, if you are taking the hormone for entire month, the pituitary will always be inhibited, and there will be no ovulation, and there will be no menstruation at all. right? So here this is given to all those female which do not want menstruation, or which have a very painful menstruation, so that sometimes a female have a dysmenorrhea, where a female actually get a lot of pain. There is a normal pain and there is a lot of pain. So in that point, a female can be given these pills. Then we have the another one, combination pills. Combination pills. What about these combination pills? These are the pills which contains progesterone and estrogen, progesterone and estrogen combination. So you take these pills for how much time you take it for? Around 21 days, right? From day 5th to 25 of the menstrual cycle. 21 days. And rest days for menstruation. Rest days for menstruation. All right, so when you stop eating these pills, the hormone will go it will go low, and the endometrium will be eroded and it will fall off, and that is menses. So these are these types of pills we have, non-steroidal and the steroidal one. Next is, we have another contraceptive method, and what do you call it as? This is the terminal method, matlab end ekdam. It's a terminal method. Terminal method, pregnancy. So this method, what I'm talking about, is a surgical method. Surgical method of family planning. Okay. So what are these methods? So there are two type of surgical method. One is vasectomy. Vasectomy. Ectomy means surgical removal of something. Wherever the word ectomy comes, that means a surgical removal of something. And how do you use it? Before using ectomy, the first words you are using here are the organ that you're removing. For example, in vasectomy, I say the vas deferens are removed. So that means vasectomy. If I say I'm removing the fallopian tubes, so the term will be tubectomy. Okay. So here, vasectomy, as I've told you, in this the vas deferens are removed. So this is a method that you perform in the males. So takes place in males. Here, vas deferens is removed, is cut and removed. And here we have tubectomy, fallopian tube is cut and removed. Okay. All right. So if I say this is the uterus of a female, this is the uterus of a female, and this is a fallopian tube. This is a fallopian tube. Okay. So here I'm cutting this part of a fallopian tube. So I'll just draw this at this point. So if I'm cutting the fallopian tube, and this is ovary, I'm cutting it here. Right? So by cutting this tube, what I'm doing is, whatever ovum is produced here, it will not move out of this tube. It will be trapped here only. Or if during sexual intercourse the sperm enters, it will not enter into this part of a fallopian tube. So what here we are doing is, we are actually blocking the transport of a gamete. Here we are blocking the transport of the ovum. So if I'm talk about here, we are blocking the transport of the sperm. So technically these methods, they are doing nothing. They are only blocking the transport of gametes. Plus one more thing, I am not removing ovaries, I'm not removing testes. I am just cutting the tubes and blocking the transport. So the person who have undergone this, it will be have a normal sexual desire. If I'm talking about males, a male will also ejaculate, but the semen will not contain sperm. How? Let's see. If I'm saying this is the testes of a male, and from testes the vas deferens are moving, and it is then entering into the urethra like this. Okay, and urethra is present in the penis like this. Okay, I'm just making a simpler diagram. So if I say I am cutting this part of a vas deferens, so sperms will be trapped here, they will not move here. So whatsoever semen will come out from here, it will only contain, semen will contain only glandular secretion. So prostate gland, seminal vesicle, bulbourethral, they will give the secretion to the semen, but there will be no sperms. Why? Because I have already cut and removed here and there is no sperms, right? Okay. All right. So we have talked about, a lot of contraceptive methods. So what do you think, which is the ideal contraceptive? Or what do you think an ideal contraceptive should have? An ideal contraceptive should be user friendly. It should be user friendly. That means we can usually use it. For example, if for instance, if I say IUDs, right? IUDs, you have to go to the doctor and then they will apply it and everything will, get resumed. But if I say the condoms, you can just buy it easily from the counter, over the counter, from the chemist. You can easily use it yourself, and no pregnancy, right? So here the first point says it should be user friendly. Second, easily available. As I've told you, over the counter it should be easily available. And it should be cheap. That means less expensive. If it is in the thousands, not even, a lot of people will not be able to afford it. So if I say it's a 1 rupee, anyone can afford it. So it should be less expensive. It should have least side effects. If I say the pills have a lot of side effects on a female's body, some of them can even, make the females fat, or, a lot of side effects can be there. So that will not be a good contraceptive. Fine. So it should have a least side effects. And then it should be effective. That means if you're using it, it should be working. Doesn't mean it is having, a high failure rate like the natural methods. And the last is it should be reversible. If I quit using it, I will again be fertile, right? If I quit using it, I should again resume my fertility. I will not become infertile. So irreversibility is seen in the case of surgical methods, the tubectomy and vasectomy, right? Okay. So this is the properties of the ideal contraceptive. Moving further to the MTP. What is MTP? MTP is the medical termination of pregnancy. Medical termination of pregnancy. So you must have heard the word abortion, right? Abortion. So abortion is of two types. Abortion is of two types. One is spontaneous, that you see in the movies, that an actress is pregnant, or a female is pregnant. You see in the movies or the, daily soaps. She's pregnant and then she gets fall off from these stairs, and suddenly boom, she just fall off, and then there was no left baby left, or she got bleeding. So that type of abortion that occurs, spontaneously, so you call it as a spontaneous abortion. And then is induced, that you deliberately do, right? So this induced abortions, they are known as the MTPs, medical termination of pregnancy. So medical termination, that means medically termination, matlab, or means that you are, stopping it of pregnancy. So what are the various methods by which you can actually abort a fetus or an embryo? So there are different methods used. Different methods used. So the first method is vacuum aspiration. That means with the help of a vacuum, we can extract out the fetus. So a vacuum is inserted inside the vagina, and with the help of that, it can be extracted out. Or by giving a saline infusion. If you give a lot of saline infusion into the womb, the embryo will get desiccated and it will dry and fall off. Or simply by surgical scrapping, or by a surgery. And then by some pills. What are these pills? Like mifepristone or RU486. Okay, so these are the pills that actually inhibit progesterone. If you have revised the human reproduction, so you must be knowing it, that progesterone maintains endometrium. So if I inhibit progesterone, will endometrium will be maintained? It will not be maintained, and it will fall off, right? So this is what happened. So there was a act, MTP Act, that was enacted in 1971, and under this the MTP is regulated. So its amendments had occur year after year, which are like a lot of new things are added. So the latest according to latest amendment in this act, what they say is, if you have, if the female is pregnant and the pregnancy is not of much weeks, if the pregnancy is of not of much weeks, for example, for instance, they have given if it is within the 12 weeks, then only one doctor can perform this surgery or the MTP. But if it is more than the 12 weeks but less than the 24 weeks, if it is more than the 12 weeks but less than the 24 weeks, then there should be the advice of two doctors and they will do that MTP. But if it is more than 24 weeks, it is illegal. It is not advisable a female to undergo the MTP after 24 weeks, because a lot of organs are formed and this can actually kill the fetus as well as the mother, right? So if the pregnancy is less than 12 week, we need one doctor or medical practitioner. And if it is more than 12 week but less than 24, we need two doctors. All right, so this was about the MTP. So the next we have is STIs. And what are STIs? STIs are sexually transmitted infections. What are they? These are sexually transmitted infections. They're also known as STDs, which is sexually transmitted diseases. Okay. They're also known as reproductive tract infections. What are they known as? They are also known as reproductive tract infection. So why you call it as reproductive tract infections? Because they actually infect your reproductive tract. And why do you call it as sexually transmitted? Because one of the way of their transmission is sexual contact. So let's see how do they spread. So what is their way or mode of spread? So one, as I've told you, that they spread through unprotected sexual intercourse with the infected person. Second, we have through blood transfusion. For example, due to some accidents or some conditions, if a person needs some blood and the blood is infected and the donor's blood is infected, the recipient can get that disease. Then infected syringe. And this type of infection, the one with the infected syringe, is seen in the drug addicts, because the syringe is injected into the blood vessel. So the organism can get, the one which is causing the STD can get on the syringe, and if that infected syringe is injected into the another person which is normal, that person can get that disease. And then from mother to fetus through placenta. So if a mother is having this disease, so through placenta, it can transfer into the fetus. So let's see what are the various types of STIs that we come across. So the STIs are different according to the causative organism. For example, if I talk about the bacterial STIs. Bacterial. So in bacterial, we have the first one, which is gonorrhea. And second, we have syphilis. And third, we have chancroid. So if I talk about the gonorrhea is caused by again a bacteria, because these are bacterial STIs. So the bacteria is Neisseria gonorrhoeae. So what happened in this is there is inflammation in the genitals, in the reproductive tract, and this inflammation and infection can go further into the other organs. Like if in case of female I talk about, it will start from external genitals, vagina, it will reach to the uterus, and then into the fallopian tube. In fallopian tube, it can actually break all the cilia there, it can destroy all the cilia, and then later on it can pass into the pelvis region where the ovary is present, right? And later on it can inflame all the pelvis region. Now what is a pelvis region? This lower abdominal is a pelvis region where urinary bladder and uterus is present, right? So if it this entire pelvis get infected, you call it as pelvic inflammatory disease, and this can lead to death of the individual, right? So also with this, what can happen further is if a female's fallopian tube cilia is distorted, it's destroyed, the female will get infertile. So also if the female's uterus get infected, and during pregnancy especially, the fetus that is formed cannot be alive. It will be, you call that as stillbirth, that the fetus is born and the fetus is no more alive, you call that as stillbirth. So what happened here is inflammation in external genitals, uterus, then we have fallopian tube, then we have the pelvis. And when it is pelvis, you call it as PID, pelvic inflammatory disease, which is PID, right? So I have told you some effects. So let's see what are the effects. So let's write them down. What are the effects of STIs? What can happen here? In case of both male and female, it can cause infertility. And in case of female, if a child is born, it's not alive, you call it as stillbirth. And it can be fatal when PID occurs. Right? Otherwise, there are a lot of other things as well. It can actually affect the female's body in a lot more different ways. Okay. All right. Moving further to the gonorrhea in males, everything will be the same. In males, the urethra will be inflamed, leading to the other organs, and ultimately it can cause orchitis. And what is orchitis? We use the word orc for testes, so inflammation in testes. Then we have syphilis, and syphilis is caused by Treponema pallidum. Treponema pallidum. The most common syphilis is neurosyphilis. So syphilis occurs in the stages, and its last stage is the neurosyphilis, where there is a degeneration in the neurons. So what happened in a syphilis is a formation of cankers. Cankers are like blisters, like a blisters, right? Like a blisters on the external genitals. External genital. And sometimes these cankers also occurs, and but the causative agent is different, and when the causative agent is hemophilus, you call it as cancroid. The difference in these both cancroid is the cancroids and syphilis are more painful than that. Though syphilis is also treatable, these all are treatable because these are bacterias, and bacterias can be treated with the help of antibiotics. So in all the cases, how to treat them? We can treat them with the help of antibiotic, right? So you can treat them. Moving further to the next, which is the viral one, and usually viral one are not treatable. Viral. So in viral, the first one which we have is genital herpes. The second we'll discuss here is genital warts. The third that we'll discuss here is hepatitis, which is hepatitis B, and the last one is HIV AIDS, right? Or simply we'll write here AIDS. Okay. Now, first of all, genital herpes. So what is the causative agent? Obviously the virus. And what is the name of the virus? HSV2. Herpes simplex virus. Why 2? Then there must be a 1 as well. The 1 cause cold sores or the blisters around the mouth, whereas HSV2 is causing the sexually transmitted disease here. So this is not curable, this disease. I told you, the viral, they are mostly not curable. Not curable. Right? So what happened in the genital herpes? There are blisters present or formed all over the genitals, right? And it's not curable. Then we have genital warts. Now, what are warts? Warts are like small, small tumors. So, what are warts? They are benign tumors. Benign tumor is the one which does not move from one place to another, and it is less harmful. The one which is harmful, that is malignant one, and you call it as a cancer. But these are small, small tumor like substances. The genital warts is caused by HPV, human papilloma virus. And this is the only viral disease which is curable. Which is curable. Usually, viral diseases are not curable. This is the one which is curable, right? We have different techniques to cure it. We can either directly burn the tumors, we can burn them with the help of laser or cryotherapy, or we can surgically remove it, or we can also perform the immunotherapy here. Hepatitis B is the inflammation of liver. Hepatic word, we use it for liver always. And why is this happening? Due to hepatitis B virus. Right? This hepatitis B virus, it completely erode the cells of your liver, and the liver actually gets damaged. Again, there is no cure, but there is a vaccine. And what is this vaccine? You can prevent it with vaccine, that is Recombivax HB. Recombivax HB, right? Then we have AIDS. What is the full form of AIDS? You all know maybe. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. That means there is the deficiency of what? Immune system. And this occurs due to HIV. What is HIV? Human immunodeficiency virus. Right? So, if I talk about out of all these what diseases we have learned, most of them, they are infecting your reproductive tract. But there are two diseases which are not infecting the reproductive tract. They are what? They are hepatitis, because they are infecting the liver, and that is infecting the immune system. About HIV, you will be learning in the next chapters, like human health and diseases. Fine? Okay. Moving further to the next. Next, we have protozoan. Yes, we have one protozoan disease as well. And what is its name? Its name is trichomoniasis, also known as leukorrhea. So this occurs due to a protozoan, not a bacteria, not a virus, it's a protozoan, right? So what is that protozoan? Trichomonas vaginalis. Trichomonas vaginalis. Okay, so it's trichomoniasis that occurs due to Trichomonas vaginalis. So this Trichomonas vaginalis, it usually infects female more. That means it infects the male, but the symptoms are more often shown in the female. Because in male, the urethra is acidic, because from urethra, both urine and semen passes. So the urine keeps the urethra of a male acidic, but in female we have separate openings. We have vaginal different and anal different, and as well as urethral opening is different. So the if somehow the female's vagina get more alkaline due to use of excessive hard soap, right? Otherwise the female's vagina is acidic due to presence of some lactic acid microbes there. thankfully to these microbes in a female, that these actually convert the glycogen into lactic acid and the female vagina gets acidic. But when you use a lot of alkaline soap there, these microbes they die and the pH gets alkaline. And now this alkaline pH of vagina is an opportunity for these protozoan. So this is how we say it shows more infection in female when the vagina gets alkaline. All right. So why you call it as leukorrhea? Because there is excessive mucus production. So here excessive frothy discharge occur. Frothy or cloudy, like a cloud. You know, when there is excessive foam formation, right? Then there is, a cloud like appearance. So that type of discharge occurs. Frothy discharge from vagina. Again, this is curable. But the only diseases which are not curable are your certain viral diseases, except one, which is that genital warts. All right. So coming to the very, very important topic of this chapter and the interesting one, and nowadays it's like, boom in the industry of, this gynecology, because a lot of people, they were not able to get a baby. They were infertile. So it's like a gift of a god to the infertile people because they also want a child. Okay. So first of all, what is this art? Art is assisted reproductive technology. So you must have heard of IVF centers in a lot of hospitals, right? So we are going to talk about that, or the test tube babies. You must have heard. So first of all, why do we perform art? We perform art for infertile couple, right? So what is infertility? Let's talk about it. What is infertility? Infertility is a condition when a couple is undergoing unprotected sexual intercourse, even if they're undergoing sexual unprotected sexual intercourse for around 2 years, they are not able to conceive, or they are able to get a child. That particular stage is known as infertility, right? So here, what is infertility? When a couple is not able to conceive, even if they are performing unprotected sexual intercourse. And what is the time interval? For 2 years. All right. So this you call it as the infertility. So what are the problems that can cause the infertility in a male or a female? So for instance, if I talk about the males, now what can go wrong with the males? As I have told you, out of these couples, either a male or a female can be infertile, or both can be infertile. So if a male is infertile, maybe the male is not producing enough sperm, and you call it as oligospermia. What do you call it as? Oligospermia, which is low sperm count. Or maybe the sperm he is producing, are enough, but they are not, motile. They're not moving. Now the sperm runs, it has a tail. So that you call it as asthenozoospermia. That means non-motile sperm. Non-motile sperm. Then we also have another condition. What is this condition? When the shape of a sperm is not good enough to fertilize. That is teratozoospermia. Terato means monster. So this is not, shape is not well. Okay. Other than that, what can be other problems a male could have? A male could have the azoospermia. That means it is not producing any sperm. No sperm. Or a male is impotent, that is, he is not able to control the erection properly, that's why he's not ejaculating, right? Otherwise there can be inflammation in testes, and that is orchitis. Inflammation of testes. All right, what can go wrong with the female? What are the problems a female could have? First, a female is not ovulating, that's an ovulation. Second, the female is not ovulating regularly, that's oligo ovulation. Or a female have blocked fallopian tubes. If a female have a blocked fallopian tube, the ovum cannot move, or the sperm and ova cannot meet. Or we can also say the ciliary or the cilia of the fallopian tube, it's destroyed. So these can, any of these can be a problem in a female, or the female's egg is old enough and that's why it's not able to reproduce. All right, so what are the techniques we use there, what we perform here? It's not that if a person is not getting pregnant, or a female is not getting pregnant, and straight away the doctor will produce a test tube baby. It's not like that. They will perform a lot of tests first, then they will give a lot of hormones. So if works out like that, the pregnancy occurs. No other methods are used. Otherwise, the first technique they use is artificial insemination. So, what is artificial insemination? What is insemination? Insemination means deposition of semen in the female reproductive tract, right, in the vagina. So, depositing the semen of a male in the vagina is insemination. But that occurs during ejaculation, normally during sexual intercourse. But when a male is having very low sperm count, so after one or two ejaculation of a male, a lot of semen is collected, and then with the help of a doctor, it is artificially inseminated in the female's vagina to ensure that a number of sperms are going, so that the ovulation, if it has occurred at that day, the fertilization will take place, right? So what is artificial insemination? And when you do it, when male produces less sperm, so what happened here? The semen is deposited artificially. Where? In vagina. So when this artificial insemination occurs in the uterus, not in the vagina, we have another term, that is IUI. Intrauterine insemination. So what is intrauterine insemination? When the deposition occurs in the uterus. Fine. Other than that, if this doesn't work out, what techniques are used? The technique used is IVF. What is IVF? In vitro fertilization. In vitro means outside the body. Outside the body. In vivo means inside the body. If a fertilization is taking place inside the fallopian tube, you will call it as in vivo. But when it takes place outside the body of a female, you call it as in vitro. So this one, outside body. Okay. So what happened is here, you must have heard the word test tube baby. So why you call it a test tube baby? The baby is not completely formed in the test tube. Rather, the fertilization takes place in a test tube or in a petri dish, right? So you must have seen a dish, the glass dish in the laboratory, the flat glass dish. That's a petri dish, right? So what we do is we take a petri dish, then we take out the female's ova, and we also take male sperm, and we allow them to meet here. All right, so what we are doing here is we are what we are doing, we have taken the ovum and the sperm from the husband wife, right, like that, and or the father or the mother, and then we allow it to fertilize outside their body in a petri dish. Fine. So that's is IVF, that you call it as IVF, in vitro fertilization. What is this? This is the ovum and this is the sperm. Now this, after fertilization, will form zygote. Whenever the egg and sperm they meet, they form zygote, and then they will form the embryo. Now if the embryo is less than 8 cell stage, 8 cell or blastomere, You know that if the embryo is like more than 16 cell stage or so, 8 to 16 cell is morula, and it is present near the uterus in the fallopian tube, and it will then start moving towards the uterus. So if it is less than 8 cell stage, or if it is a uterus, then you will transfer both of them into fallopian tube, and you call this technique as ZIFT. Where did we transfer them? We transfer them to fallopian tube. So this technique is ZIFT. Why you call it as ZIFT? Its full form is zygotic intra fallopian transfer, because we are transferring it in the fallopian tube. But if the embryo is more than 8 blastomere stage, so where it is supposed to be? It is supposed to be in uterus. So you will transfer to uterus, and that technique is IUT. The one technique we have done is IUI, that's our intrauterine insemination, where you deposit the sperm artificially, or semen artificially into the uterus. But IUT, here what you are transferring the embryo into the uterus, so it's intrauterine transfer. Moving to the next technique we have is a very important, very beautiful technique, that is a GIFT. What is its full form? Gametic intra fallopian transfer. So you remember by this that your Diksha ma'am has told you that gift is a gift to a female, right? Gift is a gift to a female. For example, there is one female who is unable to produce the ova. So that female has a normal husband. Fine. So that female can take the ova from a donor. That female can take a ova from a healthy donor. Now another female will give her ova, and that ova will be injected into the fallopian tube of the female partner, and then the husband will deposit the semen, and then the fertilization will take place in vivo. All right. So what is happening here is, so we have one mother, right, and then we have the father. All right, or better, we will not use the word mother or father here. We will use, there is a female which is a recipient, because it is taking the ova from the donor. Then we have a donor female. This donor will give the ova. So here we have the donor's ova. Then even after, like either you can use the artificial insemination, or you can use the normal fertilization techniques like sexual intercourse, and then this this ova which the donor has given to the female, this will be transferred to recipient. Okay, and where? Fallopian tube. This fallopian tube will then receive the sperm. Okay, so then what will happen? The sperm will come, and the fertilization will take place in vivo. So this is the gift. Okay, so what is the fundamental behind this? If a female cannot produce the ova, it can take it from the donor. All right. Other than that, we also have one technique, that is surrogacy. What is surrogacy? You must have heard of the word surrogate mother or gestational carrier right? So if you have seen the movie Mimi, have you seen it? No. Okay, no problem. So what happens is, when a female produces ova and a male, the partner, husband, produces normal sperm, but the female's uterus is not capable of carrying the gestation, or the female is old enough, at that point the mother's ova and the father's sperm is extracted, IVF takes place, and then that zygote is not transferred into the biological mother, but it is then transferred into the surrogate mother, right, who is really unrelated. But the only thing she'll do is, she will take up this pregnancy for a lot of like 9 months, and then the child will be of the biological mother. So that's the surrogacy. All right, so this was all about this chapter, reproductive health. So what you have to do is you have to read the NCRT, make the good notes, revise as much as you can, and keep on missing your Diksha ma'am. All right, bye bye. Okay, so what we say here is time is precious, utilize it carefully. Bye bye.